So now what we want to do is define the key planetary phases, or archetypes. And once we make these definitions, now that we have the knowledge of this system, you can apply them in that system. No? The first one is the sun-moon. Sun-moon. The key archetype here is how one creatively actualizes and gives personal form to one's sense of purpose. Sun-moon. One is able to supply a personal identity with the sense of purpose we have. As an example, you can have a Sagittarius sun, but if your moon's in Virgo versus Taurus, how you're giving personal form and definition, identity to, how to actualize it, how to actualize the Sagittarius sun, is different. Yes? And the phase that you find your sun-moon tells you how this comes to pass. The point is that these archetypes in themselves operate beyond the signs. When you put the sign on it, you condition it. If I have sun-moon in a new phase, we've just understood that the new phase is crisis in action. We now have the awareness of why it's a crisis in action. We understand its polarity point. Now if you put on this idea, how this person's going about creatively actualizing his purpose, and the sun-moon's a new phase, can you then look at this person and say they're going to have a life that is defined to a crisis in action? As they attempt to find a form, moon, that is most specific to actualizing the sun? See how it works now. Mercury, Jupiter. Let's agree that Jupiter is the intuitive function in consciousness, the right brain, that which is non-linear, image-based. Ideas that come to the intuition occur in and of themselves. The way the intuition, Mercury is going to correlate with our capacity to communicate these ideas and beliefs. Jupiter is going to correlate with our ability to expand upon these beliefs, to learn new knowledge. Jupiter, Mercury. So if we put this in an archetypical situation, what if we have Mercury, Jupiter in a full phase? You see what now is in opposition? What's in opposition is the nature of what one is intuiting and what other people think. Yes, do you see how this follows? The Mercury is going to be in the full phase. We said that in the full phase we must learn to embrace others as equals. We're now interacting socially. All of you sitting here in this room have a Mercury function. All of you have your own ideas, your own opinions, your mental constructs, which support belief systems. All of you do embrace, go out here and you have conversation. Your belief systems, your mental ideational system, how you communicate, it's all operating. The temptation in the human organism is when they hear ideas that agree with their own thought form, goes, mm-hmm. And when they disagree, mm-mm. This could not more perfectly illustrate Mercury, Jupiter in opposition. We go, mm-hmm, because that's self-consistent. We feel secure. And we go, mm-mm, when it doesn't. Could you say in this particular phase, Mercury, Jupiter full phase, that there's clearly a conflict between the individual's right and left brains? Who is leading what? Is somehow the left brain trying to unlock the right brain, or is the right brain somehow trying to unlock the left brain? If you look at this from a healing point of view, for those involved with healings, This is called the hemispheric switching, which is going to report itself in the nervous system. Now the question becomes, from an evolutionary view, why has the soul evolved it to this point? What's the intention? It's really neat playing astrological detective. Because when you're looking at a piece of paper with symbols, in effect, you're playing astrological detective. Yes? What if you have Mercury, Jupiter in a new phase? If you understand in this case that Jupiter is the applying principle, what is applying to what? Do you think that a person who had a Mercury, Jupiter in a new phase has forethought before they speak? Or is it operating instinctually? That they're not even aware of what they're thinking until they speak. Do you see how this would work? This is quite different than having the Mercury, Jupiter in full phase. The person will always be thinking or considering what they should say, how they should say it, and when they should say it. They could say halting action. There is an inner conflict, an opposition within their own consciousness. Whereas the new phase is operating at once. Do you see the difference? Now we ask the question, what if this very same thing is in a balsamic phase? And here we're dealing with the nature of mutation. In this particular phase, can there even be a possibility of linear thought? Linear, ABC. Or is in and of itself, is it going to naturally think in parable, or allegory, or metaphor, as a way of trying to communicate larger symbols from on high? Guess who had this symbol? Yeah. Jesus Christ. Who also happened to have 6 planets in Pisces and Gemini house. Now, how did this man speak? The problem in this kind of way of speaking is that it can be interpreted according to somebody's convenience. Which is why we have so many versions of Christianity. Do you see what I'm getting at? Think a moment to yourself, where's your Mercury-Jupiter phase? If you've got Mercury, Jupiter in the gibbous phase, you feel like you have confidence in your communication. Are you going to find yourself thinking about yourself in naturally critical ways? Are you going to be comparing yourself to other people's ways of communicating and the nature of their belief systems, which have the effect of reinforcing a sense of intellectual inferiority? Yes or no? If you've got Mercury, Jupiter in a crescent phase, a polarity being disseminating, if you're sitting in a class like this, you're going to be naturally quiet. Also, Mars, Venus. This is clearly the situation on an archetypical level, because Mars, in and of itself, needs necessary independence to initiate whatever experiences it deems necessary in order to find out about who it is as an individual. And yet the Venus function is that natural archetype in consciousness in which the individual wants to complete itself through relationship. Relationship means becoming aware of the necessity of someone else's needs, someone else's value systems, someone else's expectations. So if we now have a Mars-Venus function, the Mars part wanting independence, the Venus function wanting relationship, and we put this in archetypal phases, do you see now how this could work out? But from an evolutionary point of view, at what part of the cycle are they on? Or is it disseminating? Are they going to be adopting the relationship forms that the consensus society authorizes? Is it going to be balsamic in such a way that they're going to be culminating all kinds of relationship patterns with all kinds of types of people in a life? The progressive awareness, not this, not that. Is it going to be in an absolutely new phase? I don't know what I want. Instinctually initiating all kinds of relationships with all kinds of types in order to create reactions, in order to find out what it does need. And then we have Jupiter and Saturn. The bottom line in this archetype, how we go about integrating the nature of our belief systems within the context of existing conditioning society. How we go about, because Jupiter here again is belief systems. And how we go about integrating the nature of our belief systems within the existing context of the society that we're born into. Saturn. Any given society at any time has authorization, power, because of consensus-held beliefs, what most people believe. So the bottom line, are these belief systems that you have going to be in harmony, conflict, what kind, how much stress? In a very practical sense, it's going to correlate with your capacity to survive or to make a living. You know, if you look at this from a collective view, every time Jupiter-Saturn makes a conjunction, you have a brand new economic cycle from a governmental point of view. Somebody coming to power has got a new idea. And this sets in motion 10 years in which the idea is actualized. It comes to opposition, the new model collapses progressively. Over the next 10 years. It works like clockwork. As an example, the last conjunction is 1980. In the US, we had the lunatic called Reagan. All he had to do was wave the hand in the sky, everything's fine. The superficial American goes, oh, good. That's all I need to know. That's what I want to believe. Why? What preceded Reagan? Carter. So people wanted to believe in magic. And for the next 10 years, Reagan created the most, in one 8-year period, he created more debt in one 8-year period as president than had ever been done by all other presidents combined. In one 8-year period. The United States went from a creditor nation to a debtor nation, to being in debt. You know, the debt is so big in the U.S. now, it would take every citizen in the United States at this minute to commit $17,000 to the government to get out of debt. And all you have to do now is take a survey of what's going on in the world, and most of you realize there's an increase in recession everywhere. Why? Look at the nature of the cycle. See how it works? Practical reality. It's your pocketbook. And we're talking about the nature of belief systems again. Right? It's like in the US, Reagan comes in with these belief systems, we do this and this will happen. People buy into the belief system. See how it works. So, and then you have Saturn, Uranus. This is the most interesting cycle. It's a 48-year cycle, from conjunction to conjunction. And what you have here at the conjunction or new phase is the existing social conditions of society or consensus reality being seeded by Uranus, the revolutionary impulse, which sets in motion a 48-year cycle. That we all are in, as these are a collective impact on you. Each phase in this 48 years has an 8-year life. So that means for 8 years, when from the conjunction, there's going to be millions of people with the Saturn, Uranus, and new phase. Then millions with crescent, then millions with first quarter, all the way around. And what happens in the new phase is that the universe, so to speak, manifests a bunch of Uranian types that have the effect of impacting on the existing Saturn reality when they come to maturity. An example, in the middle 40s, this thing occurred. And people were born at that time, people like the Beatles, Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, and this took place in Taurus, so that the transformative message came through music. By the time they came at Taur in the late 60s, we all know what happened. And at that point, Uranus is now transited into Libra, the motto of the time, free love. At the same moment in time, Neptune was in Scorpio. Acid. All the drugs. We also had a renaissance of Eastern spiritual life. Yes, you see. And when it was in Scorpio, the massive polarization that for those that survived it are familiar with, of the existing authority, Saturn. Remember all the protests, marching in the streets, even to the point where the existing authorities had to use gas to control people, as in tear gas. It was an interesting time in the U.S. So the point is that we are born into these sub-cycles, generationally, and they serve as social imprinting, that impact on your subconscious. And this thing comes to maturity by, if it's a 48-year cycle, how many years does it take to come to opposition when it's in place? And this like clockwork. If you study history like I do, you see it working like clockwork. These are called cycles within cycles. You see how this is operating? Yes? So now what you can do with these key planetary phases, even though, yes, you can put lots of planets in phases, but these are the key ones in the archetypes. And these again are typically operate beyond the actual signs and houses. They're archetypes, intrinsic to consciousness on this planet. So the next step, of course, is to go ahead and place them in your individual charts. What houses do they take place in? What signs are they occurring in? And this serves as additional conditioning of these archetypes. Yes? An example, if you've got Mars, Venus in a new phase, we describe the archetype. Now what if both this Mars and Venus, what if they're both in Scorpio? Versus that Mars, Venus being in Pisces, or Virgo, Leo. The archetype's operative. How it's actualized is now determined by the house and sign that the thing is in. You understand this point? So for the sake of example, what if person X here has Mars, Venus, new phase, Sagittarius, second house? What if we're just going to make an illustration. What if Mars and Venus are in a new phase, they're in a sign Sagittarius in the second house? Let's condition the archetype by the house and sign. Hello. Your turn. Yes?
I like the formulated would be as much.
Please. Sure.
Its values in that Mars-Venus area be very conditioned by desire to expand all kinds of experiential possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So find out as much as they possibly could about the Mars-Venus.
Okay. Yes, good. Now, if we understand as an example that the second house in our relationship formations can become possessive, what is going to be this person's reaction in a new phase, Sagittarius, in this house, to somebody who wants to possess it? Who can imagine? Totally so. There wouldn't be an iota of even permitting it for 1 minute. Not 1 minute. What else could you say about it?
It is contributing to the self-worth.
Absolutely so. There's a deep process of self-discovery. That the person's primary relationship is to itself. Taurus. Second house. The archetype of the second house here is one of self-sufficiency, self-reliance, self-discovery. It's an inverted process.
The danger of that going at the expense of, for example, your partner? Push-pull between Venus and Mars?
It depends, because in this particular example, the partner themselves would have to be self-sustaining, self-reliant, self-empowered. So that the person's need for freedom was not interpreted, Sagittarius, as being threatened. With the Sagittarius conditioning, could it, as was pointed out, would not the partner also have to be Sagittarian-like, philosophical, expanding mind, restless, a sense of continuous exploration, not just with the mind, but also in the second house, sexually. Yes? And that because it's in a new phase, it would be like an ongoing discovery or game. You see how it works? What if you put sun, moon in a balsamic phase, the sun being in Aquarius, the moon being in Capricorn, the sun being in the 10th house, the moon in the 9th house. Think of the inherent conflict here.
Can you repeat that?
Sun's in Aquarius in the 10th house, moon's in Capricorn in the 9th house. It's a balsamic phase. If you want to even make it more specific, 330-degree aspect.
Problems in going on, going into a new cycle. Whether you go into a new cycle or you stay in the old one.
Yes, remember we said the key in this particular situation?
The ninth and the 10th house.
The person must bring the culmination while at the same time wanting to be free of it. It's an balsamic condition. It's trying to mutate. That's the archetype. But how is this archetype being actualized? With a 10th house Aquarius sun and a Capricorn moon in the 9th house.
Somehow emotionally, I think, the concept will be broken in the 9th house. The 9th house, I think, suddenly emotionally the concepts are broken. The Capricorn phase is broken. To realize it in the 10th house, be more paranoid.
Yes, and it's very good. And a way of restating that in another way is that, keeping in mind again, Capricorn is an an inverted function. This energy going inside, as is the balsamic phase. It's inversion of energy. So with the Capricorn moon, we're clearly looking at a deep reflective process that's withdrawing from the cycle that it's been in. This is taking place in the 9th house. Is this not going to create a deep introspective consciousness which is examining the nature of belief patterns that have the effect of Capricorn's Aquarius sun and 10th conditioning people's identities? And that the Libra sun in and of itself is going to want to liberate, be free from this kind of conditioning impact. And it does so through reflecting on the nature of 9th house, the nature of belief patterns and how this creates conditioning. Yes? Do you see how it is working?
Probably the best way to have it in.
Hmm?
I just thought it's probably the best way to have it in, because the 9th house is already natural.
Yes, but the 9th house, at certain levels of evolution, can be the very nature of religious thought. In a sense that this form is right and this one is wrong.
But only if you have to have the balsamic phase, it's best to have it in the 9th house.
It's no matter best or worst, it's just where it's occurring.
The sun and the 10th still. They go on.
But is not the sun and the 10th also the need to integrate into the system? So that it's then possible that this may be an individual who is a born natural teacher, who has the capacity of teaching other people through the 9th house moon the nature of their conditioning patterns and how it impacts in their sense of definition in the context of their society. And how to be free of these darn things. And this is how they go about actualizing their sun moon. If you can start to embrace these sorts of ideas and bring them into your personal life. And for those that are doing astrological work, counseling, can you imagine the gift you bring to such people? Because all you're doing here is validating how they are naturally put together. How many people like to stand as a group of one? Goes right back to this age-old question of insecurity. You know, for those that are hung up in a cancer-like way, and is hopeless needs to feel secure, keeping in mind the nature of conditioning patterns, you think your security is outside. There's a great little book to read in this case, written by an American philosopher named Alan Watts. And it's a book called The Wisdom of Insecurity.
It's the same as Saturn in Pisces.
Hmm?
It's the same as Saturn in Pisces.
Saturn and Pisces. Of course. The very nature of structural definition now is in a Piscean archetype. This is, of course, the example of sand going through the hands. You pick it up and it goes through. You can try and hold it and there it goes. For those that are secure from within themselves, this is not such a problem. Now again, the point to keep in mind is that when you look into a birth chart, these various planetary phases, the archetypes and the other ones, will be in different states of evolution relative to this natural cycle. If you begin to grasp that whole and understand how exactly that consciousness is put together, not only understanding this for yourself, but for those that are doing astrological work, bringing this knowledge to another, you see what you're going to do. Now then, in the last few moments, you can ask me what you wish. Questions? So can you then at least see the relevancy of thinking this way? Yeah? Once you can start thinking, you'll have much more ability to grasp the nature of planetary cycles. From the big point of view of planetary evolution. It goes right back to where we started. We're in a transition between the Pisces and Aquarian age.
You said that in the 150 degrees aspect, there is the sense of mission.
Hmm?
There is the sense of having a mission, and at the same time trying to avoid this mission.
Trying to?
Avoid it.
That's in the gibbous phase.
Right. Why is that so?
Because the person feels too small. If I measure myself against the light of God, how am I going to seem? So it goes right back to where we started. We're in a transition between the Pisces Aquarian age.
But yet, this is a necessary phase
Hmm?
in the 150. But yet, this crisis of the ego is also a necessary phase in the
Yes, we said this. It's necessary to readjust it.
So you start too big and afterwards you feel too small.
It starts off becoming self-directed, self-contained, developing within itself.
Yeah.
It's narcissistic for a while.
Yeah.
If it reaches a stage where it must start to share and to disseminate. Da-da-da-da. So we're going into this transition of ages. Understand now the archetypes extremely operative are, of course, this Neptune Uranus thing in Capricorn, Pluto Scorpio. Saturn's now to Pisces, And just now we have Pluto with North Node. And because this North Node has just touched Pluto recent year, in the last few weeks, for the next 18 months, the planetary archetype operative on this planet will be Pluto. Now you think of this in evolutionary terms.
Is there also one of those phases which is dominant over the others? If you have some phase in full, dominated another phase, because you can have everything
No,
in one world.
it's in natural symmetry. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to work out how, in what sort of way you would apply this to sort of like transits of the outer planets to the sun, inner planets, that sort of thing. You know, if, for instance, if a cycle is if the aspect is in the, say, the crescent stage, is that going to have a different effect to when it gets to the opposition of that planet than if it starts off in the first quarter stage?
It will never start off in the first quarter. It always starts at zero.
Yeah, but I mean, like in your own chart, say, you're taking, you're taking...
You're talking about now the transit and progression of these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's always reference to that which is natal.
Yeah.
This is like looking at a birth chart and putting transits and progressions in the thing. Those things have to be referenced to the inherent or natal imprint. To see whether dynamics or issues that are defined in that natal imprint are being worked out, involved at any point in time. Yes? Mm-hmm.
A couple of keywords for light quintal aspects.
For
144s.
144?
Yeah.
Well, there are subtle variations of the 150. 144 approaches 150. Yeah? It begins then. The beginning of the archetype of 150 begins at 144. But in my experience of working with people, a person has to have a fairly degree of sensitive awareness. To be aware of its impulse at 144 when it begins. At 150, there's no way of avoiding it. If you begin to make the choices at 144, you tend to minimize the intensity of the crises that the 150 will bring. Now, keep in mind that this next 18 months, Pluto will be the operative archetype. What you can anticipate over the next 15 to 18 months is an increasing sense of inner intensity within your individual life. You will see this increasing sense of intensity all over this planet. And the primary theme that you will all experience is a sense of polarization, inwardly, outwardly. The intention, evolutionarily speaking, of this polarization is to make new choices. Make new choices, Pluto, that hopefully begin to embrace that which is coming versus making choices that attempt to resecure the past. If choices are made that embrace the past, then you're looking at the real danger of many things, inwardly, outwardly. A simple example of this point, in the US they just found out of this, right when Pluto made the conjunction to the North Node, they found out about this man making spy thing to Soviet Russia. All the great secrets of the United States were given. Yes, think of it, secrets, Scorpio. And so suddenly, the United States population, the politicians, everybody's up, making all these Scorpio-like statements. Many of these voices, if listened to, would have returned the situation through polarization to a state of the Cold War. This is an example of a circumstance in which choices, new ones, can be made. That's one little simple example that will illustrate the point I'm making. We can allow current circumstances to trigger our past in such a way as to make choices that reflect the past, determining, dictating our behavior. Or we can see that the past is necessarily coming up to culmination, interpret it this way, let it culminate, and make new choices that embrace the future. This is the message for all of us. Thanks for coming.